Hey everybody, and as you can see I have two donuts. One I bought a few days ago before the holidays, and one is the one I originally did the video on. Now you may be wondering, why haven't you finished the bag on the beans that you originally did the video on, since your response was pretty good about those beans? Well, due to circumstance, I was not home. Now, I'm pretty sure I showed this in the video, and if not, well, I'll just tell you, the one that says best if used by October. Okay, hey everyone, and we're back here again. Now it's not. I doubt I'm gonna be able to get the same sound because it's not as quiet. But again, right? October, September, a month earlier, and I bought this a few days ago. And I bought this a few days before the holidays. So why is it that one I bought a few days before the holiday has a date that's best if used by, before this one, which is almost 2 months ago now? Now, I'm kind of curious if these beans would hold up to this, because when I first opened this and made coffee, so first when I was there and, bought this, so I bought this, and then the day after, so when I first bought this, and it was right after the holidays, no, so when I first bought this and right before the holidays, right, so the day after I made fresh coffee, and I was disappointed with how acidic and bitter it actually came out. Maybe a bit more acidic and bitter than I initially had thought, but no, I knew there was something wrong. And come on, I mean, we don't know if it's been playing there at the store for a few days or not, but or maybe it just was a shipment. Maybe they all just make them seeing it, but this should not be. This definitely shouldn't be. This should not. The due date on that should not be a month sooner than one that I bought 2 months ago. So maybe that's the reason why it was so good, was because this was relatively brand new, right? Fresh roast and probably fresh sent off and things, right? And I know that when I bought them, they were fresh because I had been to the store the day before and there was nothing there. But this, I don't know, just went in, and so this was clearly before this, and that's not what you'd expect, given that they're 2 months apart. So is that how it works? Do they make them in? Do they just make so much that they end up just spreading them out? Maybe that's the best way to keep their costs low and their margins high. Who knows? But just know that you might be disappointed a bit. September of next year, October of next year. So I will be following up on this, and maybe tomorrow I'll be making a cup of coffee from these beans comparing that with and making one with this one. I know that as I made my way through, or maybe the bottom ones, to maybe the ones that aren't exposed to much air, it got a little bit better, but it's still not as good as consistently this was when it was new. And this is just maybe a few days old at this point. This should definitely be better. Or, I mean, it should be better than what it is, but it should definitely be as good as this originally was, but it wasn't. So maybe that's where I'll head into next. Maybe just buying the raw beans and trying to roast them myself. So it's just something to let you know why maybe if you were gonna try coffee from this, just because they're out on the shelf later time doesn't mean that they were made later. Just all these things that can influence your experience with coffee. As I've met many people that have had bad experience with coffee and they don't understand why, but getting the thing with coffee is a little bit more tricky than things because there's so many things that could affect it. It could affect, as you can see here, something that you might be unaware of. You think fresh shipment, fresh coffee, but no, as this one is not. So again, it's all these small intricacies that the person might not think of. They might just assume, but they might be making decisions based on assumptions and not fact. I'm sure if they would have digged a little deeper and maybe repeated a few trials, then maybe they might find something that's a little bit that might explain maybe why they had a negative association with coffee. As I understand that coffee in the States is not necessarily as consistent, and most people just end up getting Starbucks. I definitely aim to keep improving the content and production value. So thanks for everyone who watches, and I'll see you on that next video. Hey everyone, and right now we're going to be doing the test. So here we have the one I bought a few days ago. Right, it's the following day from the little sort of update I did. So now we're going to go ahead and do it on do this one and test them out. So we're going to test this out. This one, this is the older one. That was pretty good when I bought it. Again, this one has a Best Buy date later than the one that I bought at a later time. Since I bought this later, the Best Buy date should be obviously later than this one, but no, it's actually the opposite for some reason. Okay. All right, so let's do this. Just measure out. I also opened it differently. So when I opened the other one, the new one, I didn't open that all the way, but in the old one, yes, I did. Anyway, this is how the beans look like. They still look pretty good and actually look kind of better than the other one. I hadn't actually taken a look. I just assumed since it had been over a month since I bought these, they wouldn't be good, but they still look decent. But if they're actually good, that's what we're going to test out right now. So just 36 grams. Okay, there we go. And let's put this to brew. Alright, so here, just brewed this one right, the almost 2-month-old, more around a month and a half. Alright, so just finish putting the cap on. It's fine, and we'll start with half a cup. Funny enough, this one did not come out as dark. Why is that? It's kind of interesting. By the way, here are the beans, and that's how I use it. The coffee's still good. I'm actually very shocked. What the hell? Why is the coffee still good? Were these beans just better and maybe better roasted? What's going on? Well, then clearly I wasted my money buying fresh new beans from the store because I guess maybe there's not. Maybe I just got lucky with this one. And again, All right, so I'm still gonna finish drinking this one. It's amazing. Barely bitter at all. It's been over a month too. It's interesting how this all works out. I'm not even gonna bother with the other one because I already tasted the other one. Wanted to see if that one was good or not. But no, it was just all right. So you can see here that I haven't completely opened it. That was when I was tired. Next day, but the beans might be slightly darker roasted on that one. And you can see it's that one because of the. This one is October. If it shows up. Yeah. The original one, you could see the bag is also a little older as opposed to the slightly better shaped bag because it hasn't been open as much. So, what's going on with these beans? I'm not entirely sure. Now, I don't really want to waste these beans. These beans, I guess I don't care, but either way, they're pretty darn good beans. And I might just stick it out with this one. So, so even when you get it later, it doesn't. It seems to be a huge deal with coffee. Okay. Okay, the good coffee's here, the original one. All right. You could see how the new one here, how their beans, this one has a crack in it, and this one, not really that much. So maybe this one was over roasted, or maybe just whatever causes it to crack. It's not good. So usually, sort of like how in cooking when you simmer something, as opposed to just bringing that to a raging boil, it affects how the things are extracted from there. Now this one looks a little bit better, and this one does not. So, is this just like an anomaly? Is that why? Again, but you can see here that this one's a little bit lighter. Yeah, this one's a little bit lighter in color. And this one is still a little bit darker. Just a little bit. This one's like almost a light brown. This one's like maybe a medium brown. So, are the beans here roasted? I mean, just look at the beans. There's definitely some that are a little bit lighter. And it still have that goldenness in the middle where it splits. Let's take a look at the new one. Come on. Now, there's still some golden in some of them, but you can see that it's dark in some of the splits. Like here, for one. Will this focus? Yeah, here. You can see how in the middle, some of them are still golden in the middle, which is probably why or a few days where I've brewed this in a few cups of coffee, or a few days, how sometimes it would be okay, but sometimes it just wouldn't. There's definitely some inconsistencies in the beans, whereas I remember in here, when I showed it, most of them did have that sort of very like brown, maybe like a blondish in the middle one, as opposed to here where there's still some that are still burnt. So you could see definitely that some of them are definitely darker. Like this one's definitely darker than the rest of it. So did they decide? Did they just throw in some extra dark beans from their roast on the new one? Maybe because they weren't having as much output and they wanted to get as much coffee out for the holidays, as opposed to this one, which is just more normal. But let's see if we can spot any darker. I mean, there's still a few that are still a bit dark in the middle, but they're not as prevalent. Like in the other one, you could see in the middle, there was definitely some that were really dark in the middle, as opposed to maybe just having a little bit of more darkness or browning in the middle. And they're not as cracked. They're usually very smooth on the back. And again, this is more light brown stuff. So, again, this is just how this can difference between this and how, even though it's been about a month and a half, I think these beans are still good. Normally, the other beans don't last that long. And whatever the reason is why these are better. I mean, it does have a best if used by October, the other one's September. So we could probably assume that this one came out first. And that month different is why maybe this is still good. So this might still be good because I remember, and again, it could just be there's maybe an inconsistency in the beans where, when you, not all of the beans are the same or evenly ground, not evenly ground, evenly roasted. But you can definitely see that this one did not come out as dark. It came out the way it does. So maybe it's definitely a lighter roast. Or maybe it just has a few more beans that are lighter roast, and maybe they had a few extra from their darker roast, and they decided to throw them in because maybe the medium, I know medium one is probably the most popular one. Now this bean's actually on the back looks better than this one. This one looks like it's not as smooth. This one actually looks smoother. But when we flipped on to see where splits, yeah, this one still has a little bit of that crack in the middle. This one's a little bit darker. But even then, can look pretty different. This one's a little bit more rounded. This one's a little bit more elongated. And again, you could see that these ones are a little bit rounder. Either way, this is still better. And there might be other reasons why that one's still better. Again, this one's rounded here, but you can see on the top, maybe that's just a little bit flatter there. But it doesn't look like that's that part. This is this part. Granted, and this one looks a lot more consistent, but again, maybe there's just not that many. This is a small sample, and this could just be one of the, maybe it's just a sample that the beans look better here than here. But come on, we've seen the coffee. This one's not as dark as this one, so even though they're both medium roast, they're still not both medium. This one's definitely a darker version, and it's a bit more dark, bitter, and acidic. As opposed to this one, which it's barely bitter or acidic. So, yeah, just a waste of money before the holidays because I thought these beans would have gone bad, but nope. Yep, just a little bit bitter and acidic. Not as much as the ones I've had from yesterday from this. So, again, I know coffee can be a complicated topic, and as you can see, even buying the same things on different days might not necessarily give you the same quality control or same experience, even though these are technically the same, right? About this later, this one should be better, but maybe this just has a lighter roast, or maybe there's just not the same quality control happening there. There's just so many factors that the average grower might not even think about when they're just thinking about coffee. And obviously, if you want a good consistent beans that are roasted a bit better, more consistently, as opposed to maybe just having wild varieties where sometimes they might just, because in the cheaper ones like the 8 o'clock one, remember, I think it's because they end up just putting small over roasted beans and sometimes larger under roasted ones, just sort of, I think it was the leftovers from their lighter and darker roast to give them the medium roast. And no, that's not how it works. And it could be that maybe they started doing that on here for the holidays because maybe they just wanted more coffee out again. But here, that was not the case. It's very consistent. Very, very rarely there's one, oh, maybe this sip was a little bit bitter or a little bit more acidic, but it's only very mild. But when you're used to a consistent one from this one always having a good non-bitter, non-acidic, you definitely taste that. Those few sips that are a bit different. As opposed to here where it was just a lot more bitter. It came out darker, bitter, a lot more acidic, and I mean I was still able to drink it, but it's not as pleasant as this one. So again, even buying the same brand, you'd think they'd be the same, but no, even then they could differ pretty differently. And I still think this is my favorite one. It's a light, looks the coffee came out lighter, and the other one, it's just not. It just doesn't make sense to